Thanks very much for that introduction, Veronica. We're delighted to be here. It's great to see some familiar faces in our adult education world. Also some I don't know. Welcome all. We're going to do a little bit of introduction here and then make sure that as soon as possible you're meeting our amazing panelists today. They're going to be highlighting some of their work. And we're going to also really be encouraging your participation today. So lots of questions coming on the chat, we hope, and lots of interaction with our presenters. Peter, do you want to start us off with a little intro to us? Peter?
Sorry.
Or me?
I was in
Okay.
I was in a mass mute. So anyway,
Okay.
Peter Simon, Jenny Mollican and I are partners in High Road Alliance, which we formed a year ago. Many of you may have been on previous webinars of ours, but I'll just say that we're, as our sort of branding goes, is that we're really committed to equitable career pathways. And what that really means in terms of who we work with, which we work with, clearly the CAPE and Adult Ed Consortia. We work with apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeship programs, unions, employers, nonprofits, workforce boards, all across the boards. And we really are working to build partnerships and support pathways into good jobs, including apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship. And we're very excited about how the presenters today are going to model that very well. Jenny, do you want to say anything more?
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, and here are our presenters. We want to give each of you a chance to introduce yourselves before we go into a little bit of background. So if you could each say a little bit about yourself. Angela, we'll start with you.
Hello, my name is Angela Hatter, and I am the site administrator for Charles A. Jones Career and Education Center in Sacramento, California. I've been working with this school for the last 4.5 years, doing a lot of program development. We have several career education programs, as well as academic programs, and I'm here to talk about the wonderful partnership that we recently formed with Sacramento Valley Manufacturing Alliance, and you'll hear more about us in a bit.
Thank you, Angela. And we have Tim from the Manufacturing Alliance.
Yes, my name is Tim Schaefer. I'm with the Sacramento Valley Manufacturing Alliance. I'm the director of training. Manufacturing Alliance consists of about 40 different manufacturing companies representing about 6,000 employees. Some of our members we partner with them to develop training programs, pre-apprenticeship. We're very excited. In March, we got federal approval from Department of Labor for a first of its kind competency-based program. So if they've been in the trade for quite a while, or if they're just entering the trade, they can test into at more advanced level if they have the skills. So they're very excited about that. So certainly that's what we're about. That's kind of what we're focused on. So we'll talk more about that later.
Thank you, Tim. Nancy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nancy Miller. I'm currently an educational consultant, but I am the retired director of the Sonoma County Adult Education Consortium, and I'll be discussing our response to the 2017 fires in Sonoma County, and unfortunately, every single year since then, a fire, and how we're using adult education as a pre-apprenticeship opportunity for students to go into apprenticeship programs and get family sustaining jobs.
Thanks, Nancy. And now we have Rashida and Ani, both here representing the Verdugo Job Center. Rashida, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Rashida Scott. I work for the Verdugo Job Center as a case manager. I've been working in workforce development since I graduated from college, started working as an outreach worker in South LA, and believe in how assisting individuals find employment or find their career path is the only way to self-sufficiency, and I'm very excited to discuss more about the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act and how it can greatly benefit your students.
Thank you. Thank you. And Ani.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ani. I work at the Verdugo Job Center as a case manager. I particularly work with individuals who are in adult education. I enjoy working with this group, population group, and I'll be happy to share with a lot of great services that we are able to provide at our center under the WIOA Title I.
Thank you very much. So a lot to look forward to from our presenters today. Before we jump into that, we wanted to just share our thinking about what the objectives are for the webinar. One is to very quickly just hear a few points about the urgency of adult education programs' role right now in preparing adults to participate in California's economic recovery. We don't want to take much time on that because we want to turn it over to some amazing presenters, but we want to fly through a few slides just to give that framing and make sure we're all on the same page and really thinking about what we know about the situation in the state right now. And then we're going to hear about several of these really promising programs that have been emerging in California, some of the partnerships, some of the exciting work going on that really is responding to the economic situation in ways that could be key to turning things around in the future and creating opportunities. And then, like we said, we're going to make sure there's some time for question and answer. Veronica, you want to say a few words here?
Thank you, Jenny. So part of the reason why we are here this afternoon is because this particular webinar is an extension of the CAP statewide priorities. And so this particular webinar falls under the program development state priority. And so just to give you a little bit of context of how we have arrived at the statewide priorities, the CAP office took the California Adult Education, the California Department of Education Superintendent Initiatives, as well as the California Community College System Vision Goals, and derived the Adult Education Shared Goals. So it's based on these state level goals and initiatives. And so part of the statewide priorities, the goals here are to increase credential and high school diploma / high school equivalency attainment, as well as increase transfer to community college credit coursework and decrease unit attainment and help students achieve 12 hours of instruction milestone, increase employment for CTE students and all CAP students, and reduce regional gaps in the 71 regional consortia. And so how the CAP office sees this being obtained, these goals, the adult education shared goals, is through the statewide priorities. And so the statewide priorities include equity, leadership, learner transition, program development, program evaluation, marketing, and technology and distance learning. And as I mentioned before, this particular webinar aligns with the program development statewide priority. And so here on your screen is the definition of the program development statewide priority, and programs in this area could focus on any of the approved CAP program areas, annual plan and 3-year planning, building partnerships, leveraging funding, and more to align with this particular statewide program. Statewide priority. And so the CAP and the CAP Technical Assistance Project, we have been hosting what we're calling deeper dive webinars and statewide priority webinars that align with these statewide priorities, because this is what's going to carry us forward into the next program year in terms of our professional development, as well as we enter into the 3-year plan cycle. So thank you, Jenny, Peter, and all of the panelists for answering the call to present on this particular topic and align it to our program development statewide priority. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you,
for that
Veronica.
context, Veronica. Yeah. So let's move into just this quick kind of overview.
Yep.
And Peter, you can start this one off.
Yeah. And can you go to the next slide, Jenny?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. And I'm almost certain that most of you are very up to speed on what we're talking about here. But clearly, just in terms of context, that clearly the economic impact on low-wage frontline workers has been really disproportionate in terms of the people who are served by adult education. Um, there have been probably some permanent shifts in the labor market that are going to require a retraining and upskilling, a reskilling on a level that's probably has not happened since the Great Depression in the United States. But what's also interesting in this moment is that every time you open up the newspaper, you see an article about how there's a huge shortage of skilled labor in the United States as well. So this really is kind of a classic example of how within crisis is also opportunity. And I think what we're going to hear about today from the presenters is a really good example of how these opportunities are being developed. And again, and Jenny and I have had the chance to do research on talking to a bunch of consortia, and across the state, there's a great deal of innovation going on, particularly around the kind of partnerships that we're going to hear about today. Next slide.
So the other thing we wanted to just share on a slide, just to have it in front of us as we're thinking about all this work that's going on, is just what's the profile of California's workers? And we know that so many of the low-wage workers and of the workers who have been impacted seriously by the changes going on during the pandemic are either have limited English proficiency, have low numeracy, digital skills, many lack a high school diploma. And so here's the opportunity for adult education to play a role in shaping the kind of career pathways that can help any number of people who've been affected, who've lost their jobs, who've reduced hours, who've had to look into different industries and occupations, help them to get on a path towards something that will be able to create a career, support their families. And here's just the data that tells us the role of adult education is important right now.
This is just a completely unreadable slide, but I think the point is pretty clear that as we just talked about, a number of the folks that who adult education served are in the hardest hit sectors. And you can see that the recovery has started for some of the less affected, but for the folks who are in the hardest hit sectors, things continue to be very challenging. Next slide.
Here's sort of another representation of that, just the huge numbers laid off in positions like food service and drinking places. The healthcare services are like home care aides, dental assistants, and then any number of other roles that we often see our adult education students in to earn a living. So just another representation of that.
And this data we're showing, these are live links, so you can actually, if you want to read more, you can. This is a slide from Manuel Pastor from USC. I think the importance of looking at this data, and we're not going to go into it at length, is just sometimes when we talk about immigrants and people of color, the language goes like, oh, we're going to help out these poor people. But the reality is, if you look at the data, is that immigrants and people of color are the workforce in California and will be increasingly so going forward. So,
and have been most impacted by the
Right,
pandemic in
right.
a number of areas. And here's just showing that unemployment remains really high.
Exactly.
So just to wrap up this overview, we wanted to highlight here on this slide just some of the ways in which adult education has the tools to support an inclusive economic recovery. And I think you'll see examples of this in the presentations, but adult education can be offered in in short modules. It can be customized to employers' needs. It can help move people quickly toward jobs, toward earning income. It can be offered flexibly in online or hybrid formats. And as we look at things like pre-apprenticeship moving into apprenticeship or some of these other models, it can offer on-the-job instruction that quickly moves people into jobs, work experience, and income.
So we're going to pivot now and hear from our wonderful presenters. I'll just say that these are going to be, by necessity, only 10-minute presentations followed by about 5 minutes of questions and answer. Each one of these programs could easily have a dedicated webinar just for the work they do. But this is, again, to give you an idea of what's possible out there and some great work going on. So our first presenters are going to be from Sacramento and the Manufacturing Training Center. And they've already introduced themselves, but I'll just hand it over to Angela and Tim. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you. So I will just start by saying I'm really happy to be here focusing on program development, because that is why this partnership that CAJ, Charles A. Jones Career and Education Center, that's why we actually came together with Sacramento Valley Manufacturing Alliance. In the years that I have been with CAJ, we have this wonderful site, which you'll see a picture of in just a moment. And as many of you know, in adult education, when the funding model changed, we lost a lot of funding for the programs that we had in place. And we had this huge amount of space, over 12,000 square feet. And I wanted to do something with it. And I did some research, and manufacturing kept coming up as something that this region needed. And I noticed there were no adult schools that offered a manufacturing program with many different components. So as I started looking around, and actually we can go to the next slide.
Next slide.
Oh, yes, there's our building.
Okay.
So as I started looking around and asking around, an opportunity came up where our regional consortium director, Branko Macheda, introduced me to Dean Peckham and Michael Bell at Sacramento Valley Manufacturing Initiative. And it just so happened that SVMI sent Branko an email saying that they were interested in connecting with adult schools that might be interested in manufacturing. And she put together this meeting, invited a bunch of people, and it ended up just being me, Michael, and Dean in a room with Branko. And from then on, we just started brainstorming. And I said, I have over 12,000 square feet to do something with. And they said, great. Can you accept donations? Are you open to accepting donations that aren't new? Because that comes up. Manufacturing is an expensive program to develop. And many times K-12 programs have grants, and community colleges have money, and they really want to buy new machines. And so I said, well, we're fine with donations because we don't have a lot of money. So from then on, we started looking for grant funding. And I wanted to show you kind of the progression of our partnership, because it's not something that happened overnight. We met in April 2019, and here we are in May of 2021, and we're just recently launching the program. So this has been something that we have developed over years and time and sweat, writing for grants and getting denied. And we've been fortunate to have several funding sources now that we're leveraging. But I want Tim, who's also on the line, to talk about the beginning of this, because Tim has been there from the very beginning. And we had this space that used to be an auto body program that still had cars and equipment in it. And I don't have staff. I have some staff to clean, but I said, okay, we're going to need help to get this ready. And Tim, what did you
All
do
right.
for
So
us?
I'm going to
Yes.
start out really quickly with how Sacramento Valley Manufacturing Alliance started. And this is one of our member companies. The biggest challenge they have is getting warm bodies in the door. And then skilled labor on top of that is even a bigger challenge. So these companies all kind of pooled together and had an initial meeting that was in October of 2017, and then the alliance was born, and we've had done some progression through the years at this point where we still have a long way to go. There's no question about it. But one of the challenges we were faced with is it's very expensive for a manufacturer to do on-the-job training. It takes a lot of shop time. They don't have time to cover the fundamentals of this. And so there are several high schools around that have CNC equipment. But the focus that the high schools are in is they actually want to buy the least expensive equipment that they can find. And unfortunately, a lot of the equipment turns out to be not real world. It's more hobby equipment that really, when a student were to graduate from there, they go into a commercial facility and are kind of lost. And so this is this is our vision for Charles A. Jones is we want commercial equipment on the floor. So when a student trains on that, he is immediately hireable and a lot of our vendor or our member companies don't even want to wait until they go through the program. They're starting to hire them right off the bat, right off the shop floor at Charles A. Jones. So it is, and I also, so SVMA, there's several different facets of it. One of them is we do work with education. We work with community colleges and high schools. And what we did learn pretty quickly is, and no offense to present company, but schools have their own culture. And oftentimes there's a lot of bureaucracy and business has struggles with the patience it takes to work through the bureaucracy. So I sit on lots of advisory boards, and quite honestly and frankly, I go to the advisory board meetings, and honestly, the school district is interested in nothing more than checking a box. Yep, we got somebody here from industry, and that's kind of the end of the discussion with them, because they got what they needed, and yet manufacturers are left wanting to, hey, I truly want to communicate with our school system and give the school system a real outline of what the employers are looking for. This is where Angela and Charles A. Jones have stepped up in a huge way. They are truly a partner. We're not there to check a box. They're there. We have a facility. We have industry partners that are excited. For those of you who don't know, so this machine that's over my shoulder is a very sophisticated measuring tool that's used in aerospace and SpaceX, Tesla. All the high-tech companies have this type of equipment. This machine was donated by one of our members. If you had to go and purchase this machine, it would cost you about $150,000. And lots of people ask me, well, why don't you choose a tape measure to measure this? Well, this machine is quite sophisticated in that if you want something to fit correctly and you're trying to capture gases for launching a rocket, it has to be very, very close tolerance. That means that everything has to fit perfect. And that's what this machine will let you do. So this is a CNC CMM. So we have CNC, that's computer numerical controls, machining centers that kind of do the same thing, except for they're making a component. And a lot of these, like I said, Tesla and SpaceX and Siemens, we have a big Siemens, they make locomotives and rail cars locally here. And it's a big operation. They make full scale locomotives just like you would see a freight locomotive, only what's different for them, I'm sorry about my phone. I can't turn it off.
It's okay.
But what they do is they make only passenger rail, and that plant services all of North America and South America. So you go through that plant, you'll see cars from Brazil, you'll see cars from Santa Fe, from San Francisco, all over the place. So anyhow, getting back to the I don't want to go too long, but yeah, that's what Angela and Charles A. Jones are doing is they're following the essence of the rule, where they do want industry involvement, and we have direct feedback, and it is really evident from this machine you see over my shoulder. We're yesterday I was procuring another CNC machine for her shop floor. We have another partner who I think Nancy mentioned Haas. So there are two of the biggest machine tool builders in the world, and one of them is right here in Davis. It's called DMG Mori. They build about 18,000 machines a year. Same thing with Haas also builds about 18,000 machines a year, but they are two different ends of the market. DMG Mori is very expensive. They're building a machine the last 20 years, and Haas is building a machine the last 5 years. So anyhow, long story short, I just can't say enough about the partnership that we've developed with CAJ. I think the folks that we're bringing in there, the folks that are getting the training, they're excited about doing this. So what's really interesting about this is that most of the most of the folks that have enrolled in the program have been women. It's about 75%. I was just talking to Mike Bell last night, about 75% of women. And that is, in modern day manufacturing, you don't have to be big and strong, because most of the work is done right here. So we're very excited about bringing more women into manufacturing. We're getting a tremendous amount of feedback from our member companies about women are really excelling in the welding field. Was there anything I didn't cover, Angela?
No, that was great. And I just wanted to highlight that Tim has spent many, many hours, many, many months actually helping us get our machines, the ones that were donated, getting them inspected and connected, along with several other partners. And I do want to highlight, I know we're getting close to the end of our time, but I want to highlight that when we did our launch this fall, so it took a year for us to get funding to upgrade our facilities and then get our donations. And we finally have several funding sources, which were listed on one of the previous screens. And we launched our first 90-hour manufacturing pre-apprenticeship program in October of 2020, in the middle of a pandemic. Of course, when the funding sources came through, those were awarded pre-pandemic, and we received some City Cares funding that supplemented and allowed us to do a launch. But we couldn't bring students on campus because we are an adult school connected to a K-12 programming, and our schools were closed. So we had this dilemma. We had to completely change our curriculum around and figure out how to deliver this program under these new circumstances. So our teacher was able to get training for OSHA 10 to deliver that virtually. We were able to get an online Tooling U curriculum through our partnership with Los Rios. We got free licenses for that, so that was wonderful. We were able to get 6 hours of forklift training. So we brought the students on campus for a short forklift training to get them certified there. So we had those components going. And then we were trying to figure out, how are we going to do the hands-on piece, the hands-on component of this training? You can't teach manufacturing without having the students actually use their hands. So our partners kicked into gear and they said, okay, well, let's recruit some of our SVMI employers and have our students do their internships or externships at their facilities. So this was really a true collective effort in getting this launch going, and our students were able to get that hands-on training when the school was closed. Through our partners, who Senbio is one of our SVMI partners who provided that hands-on at his facility when they couldn't come on campus. So we're very excited about this opportunity to have this partnership and to grow. We're now looking at other phases of our programming, and with the City Cares partnership or the City Cares funding, we were able to form other partnerships through SVMI. One is with the California Mobility Center, which connected us to some of the CBOs in the area. So this has really just kind of ballooned into this wonderful network of partners who are working together to provide valuable services to the community. And one of the things that we realized is that our program requires a high school diploma. It's one of our accredited programs that we offer here at CHA. But through the CBOs, there was so many interested candidates who didn't have that high school diploma, or who had language skills that were not quite at the level that Tooling U required, because Tooling U is completely online. They have to have a fairly high level of reading in order to get through it. So now we're looking at developing an integrated education training program that focuses on manufacturing for those students who have limited language skills. So it's just at every corner, we have these opportunities, which you mentioned early on, in the face of barriers and situations like COVID. Opportunities have definitely presented themselves. So we're very excited and looking forward to the future.
So if I could offer a quick clarifying note. So as you read this, you'll see SVMI and SVMA. It's actually the same organization. Under SVMA, that was our fledgling name, because we were not incorporated as a 501c3, and SVMA this year incorporated as a 501c3.
Great.
So it's the same organization, just that we just changed the name to a manufacturing alliance, because the initiative was just kind of the beginning. And now that we've matured and we're our own 501c3, that's why you see SVMA.
Great.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you for that. We were encouraging anyone to put questions in the chat box. We are open to taking questions midway into the webinar. We also will have some time at the end, but please feel free to type them as they come to you. Haven't seen any so far for this presentation, so I think we're going to move on to the next, see what questions might come up there. Peter.
Okay. I have one quick question, which is, do you, now that you have mentioned that you have an approved apprenticeship, is there a mechanism for students finishing a pre-apprenticeship to move directly into the apprenticeship? Could you just say a smidgen about that?
Absolutely. Do you want me to speak to that, Angela?
Yes, please.
So in order to have a pre-apprenticeship, according to the Department of Labor, you have to have an apprenticeship program first. So we did sort of establish a pre-apprenticeship that gives folks some skills, but it wasn't really, there wasn't anything to matriculate to. Now we can go back and have a pre-apprenticeship program that they can now. So this, we're really excited about it. Again, this is a competency-based program. So no matter where you are, if you happen to be really mechanically inclined, so there are there's actually 12 levels, but there's 8 basic levels to our program, and each one of them has a wage attached to it. So if you're starting at level 1, then you're going to start at minimum wage. If you are, but if you have mechanical aptitude, you've been a mechanic and you can sort of test into level 2 or 3, that's about $2 or $3 more an hour. So the wage starts at minimum wage, and level 8 is currently $33 an hour.
Cool.
So there's a real incentive for people to look at that and say, yes, I can really achieve that. And how we do that is we look at the schools to provide the skills. So if a student wants to learn computer-aided design or computer-aided manufacturing, they would actually go to a local community college and take those courses. We don't actually we don't offer those courses. This is completely to support education, completely to support, and we will sponsor if there's certain levels that they need to achieve, and there's either a long time period they can't get the classes, then SVMA will come in and and hold a workshop to cover the basics of that level so that the
Mhm.
student can progress through the program at a fairly rapid pace. We don't
Mm.
want somebody, waiting for years for a class to get to the next level. So we will step in and we'll rent the facility and hold a workshop and advance that cohort to the next level.
Mhm.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah. And can you just clarify, Angela, the courses that you offer currently, are those credit or non-credit courses?
So yeah, I see that question in there. So we are clock hours program. So we don't offer credits, but our career education programs are nationally accredited through Council on Occupational Education. So they are eligible for those that are more than 900 hours are eligible for federal financial aid. This
Mhm.
program in particular is only 5 weeks, so it's not eligible for financial aid, but it doesn't carry any credits. It's clock
Mhm.
hours.
Great.
And there were a couple of other questions. One was about donations. And those donations have been coming directly from the partners in Sacramento Valley Manufacturing Alliance. So we haven't done any, we, meaning CAJ, hasn't gone out to request donations. They've actually just come to us because the partners in SVMA know what we're doing. They know what we need. Tim and several others who work closely, they kind of look around for us and help us identify those pieces of equipment that we need.
Mhm.
Excellent. Thank you so
Great.
much. That was
Great.
fantastic.
I see a few other questions, but I think we want to move on with our next
Yep.
presentation just to make sure we don't shortchange anyone. There are a lot of great stories to share here, but we'll come back to some of the questions. I encourage you to keep sticking them in the chat there.
Yeah.
The next program we want to highlight is a pre-apprenticeship program. So it was amazing to hear from the Sacramento group how you've brought in the internships, the students really connecting to industry, and you've also built a pre-apprenticeship leading to an apprenticeship program. This is something we're starting to see more and more in adult education programs across the state, but they're still relatively small numbers. If you look at the CAPE data, pre-apprenticeship is one of the CAPE allowable program areas, but we're still reporting small numbers. The exciting thing about pre-apprenticeships is that they can integrate things like the basic language and math skills. They often use the integrated education and training model like Angela referred to. They can support English learners, they can support workplace readiness skills, along with an introduction to the technical skills and really contextualizing in terms of preparation for an apprenticeship program. Also, a registered apprenticeship program in particular will directly facilitate entrance into an apprenticeship program. And so it's very, very focused on getting students ready for that. And we're seeing more examples of this. Definitely more examples that are housed at adult schools or adult education programs, and that really bring the best of adult education expertise to these programs. They often work in partnership. Most definitely they work in partnership with employers, often unions, and often a community college. Often they lead to more advanced training and a certificate or degree. So I want to introduce our next presenter, which is Nancy, who's going to tell us about Santa Rosa Junior College's program.
Hey,
Are you
Jenny.
there, Nancy? Hi.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So for our program, this has evolved over time. This program actually started in a partnership with our day labor center, our Grayton Day Labor Center. We put in a landscaping program that had contextualized math and English language development because their employees were getting, or their members were getting injured on the job. And so we wanted to have a training program for them to increase their skill set and obviously their English language abilities to give them more job opportunities. And at the time that it was developed in 2015, Sonoma County was in the second year of a drought. 2016, when it actually launched, was our third year of extreme drought. And so the focus really in our county was removing traditional landscaping and transitioning it to low water use and native plant landscaping. We had a successful run with that. But at the end of the first year of that program, so that was 2 cycles of this certificate program, the Tubbs fire, which also combined with the Atlas fire and the Nuns fire, happened in Sonoma County. And it really devastated our housing market, our employment, our economic base, really, which is focused on agriculture and tourism. So the focus went away from transitioning landscaping to how do we prevent something like this from happening again? How do we address overgrowth and defensible space? So we worked, I partnered very heavily with our Economic Development Board, which is part of the County of Sonoma, still the Great and Day Labor Center. But we also had other partners come in because it was focused on defensible space, but also we lost close to 6,000 homes and buildings in Santa Rosa alone. And we had to recover from that in our construction industry. I wanted to give you the background on that, but I'm going to focus on how we developed the fire abatement program. So in talking with officials from our county office, from the landscaping industry, from the fire industry, I was going to say prevention, but it's also addressing fires. We developed a certificate program. And when I talk about our certificate programs, those are all in the non-credit end. So anything that is pre-apprentice, anything that is an integrated program is going to be on the non-credit end. As we were developing non-credit career training programs at Santa Rosa Junior College, we had 3 things that we had to adhere to, and that was we couldn't duplicate anything that was already offered through credit. We needed to make sure that there was a vertical avenue into credit and also a horizontal connection to English language development and to basic skills that would lead to a high school diploma or high school equivalency. All of the programs that are offered through the adult education department in career training are offered in a bilingual format. 85% of our students, their first language is Spanish. And so the majority of the programs are bilingual English-Spanish, although this semester they have started a Mandarin Spanish. I mean, not Mandarin Spanish, that would be very difficult. I would like to sit in on that class. Mandarin English digital skills training program. But this one, we knew that there were people that were in landscaping that could transition. There was a lot of focus on, again, on fire abatement, but how do we were already in a 3,300 person a year deficit in the landscaping industry in our area. How could we ramp up people going into this field, both in construction and in landscaping? Tragedy, as someone mentioned earlier, I think it was Peter, tragedy sometimes brings opportunity or often brings opportunity. And so for us, what that meant is we partnered with the Economic Development Board and we were able to qualify to get an Economic Development Administration grant that was partnered with FEMA to develop a center. It was a $8.2 million grant to develop a center to train people in the construction and landscaping industry. Subsequently, after the PG&E settlement for the 2017 fire, in our partnership with our credit side of agriculture, we have a natural resources department. We also are extremely fortunate. I know this does not happen everywhere in California, but we're extremely fortunate to have a 365-acre vineyard farm and forested area that we can actually practice in. So we have that as one of our campuses to be able to bring students to train them in the abatement programs. So our program consists of learning about the laws regarding defensible space. So understanding that, what it means, what it looks like. We do tree trimming as part of that, a start into the arborist program, and the apprenticeship side, the credit side would be in arborists with Atlas Tree Service, but also on the credit side. And then some general landscaping, forklift operation, and OSHA 10. And we do pay for our students to get the OSHA 10 certification. We offer general and we offer construction OSHA 10 and OSHA 30. And then we also offer it in Spanish and in English. So that the non-credit certificate will become that pre-apprenticeship. The Atlas Tree Service is in the process of getting their apprenticeship program. They had to align with the college. They're getting their apprenticeship program approved through the state, the office that does apprenticeship programs, and then that will connect in the credit side. So students will be able to transition to a credit program in forestry and natural resources with the credit apprenticeship or paid apprenticeship program. As part of this, we also offer, we were able to apply through our Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act grant in the last round and got 243 money. So that's the integrated training programs for immigrants. And we received funding to be able to run both math and English training as part of this certificate in the non-credit side.
That's great.
So we do provide intensive support in basic skills. They do get bilingual support in that. And then if they need a high school diploma, the latest program right before I retired in December is we were working with our college skills department on the SB 554 that if once students completed this and needed a high school diploma, they would enter into the high school equivalency program in college skills and then have up to 11 credits, they could take up to 11 units on the credit side as part of that SB 554. So that was another branch of this program that opened up through legislation for our students. So that is basically it. I think that I mentioned that there was a PG&E settlement. Our credit program, our agriculture program, applied for and received a $500,000 grant out of that funding to be able to support what we're doing in our fire abatement pre-apprenticeship to apprenticeship.
Terrific.
Oh, fascinating, Nancy. Thanks.
So
I
there's a lot
posted
of
a little note to
braiding,
people.
a lot of braiding,
Yes.
a lot of partners.
I was going to say, yeah, great work bringing in additional resources, sort of using both the credit and non-credit sides of your institution, and then community partnerships, the Day Labor Center, obviously deep employer partnerships, and kind of building that you're building the apprenticeship at the same time as your apprenticeship. It's a huge overall effort, but it's going to yield great results. If anyone has questions for Nancy, feel free to post them now, or we can also take some at the end. Did you want to add another point, Nancy? I think I cut you off.
We do have community-based organization partners, and we also partner with our AJCC, which is JobLink in Sonoma County. And so JobLink will come in and they'll interview all of the students that are signed up for the program. only about 60% have social security numbers. So JobLink will serve the students that they can in this program, but we serve all of the students that come in through adult education. And the majority of how we get students into our program is we advertise through Facebook, we do radio advertising, and those are the two main sources. But Facebook, we have about 8,000 followers on our page, and they're really, really good about getting the word out to everybody they know when we have new programs or opportunities arise, particularly when it's apprentice or landscaping construction based. We also had a private investor come in and donated $50,000 to help support students. So we were able to give boot vouchers and tool vouchers to the students who completed the certificate programs in construction and in the landscaping or fire abatement.
That's fantastic.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Nancy. I actually don't see any questions right now for Nancy. Keep thinking of those questions and feel free to post as we go along, but I think we're going to move on to the next slide.
Is this one?
Yeah, Peter, you can go ahead.
Again, I think a number of you probably know this, but we're also struck by how still a number of adult education consortia are not really fully taking advantage of the resources available under the public workforce system. We're going to hear in just a minute from our final presenters about the power of co-enrolling adult ed students in WIOA Title I services and all the resources that can come with that. But also just really quickly, under WIOA, that they have a lot of money, really, work experience, on the job training money that can support your students as they go to work at various employers. It doesn't even have to be a formal apprenticeship or a pre-apprenticeship. It can be just done on a case-by-case basis with employers. Also, there are funds under WIOA Title I for supportive services such as transportation, which is a key barrier to overcome for a lot of jobs, childcare, work uniforms, tools, etc. And importantly, also they're in the business of helping people find jobs. And notably, most educational institutions are not so good at that. So when you partner with them, you plug into a very vast network of job resources when you work with your local one-stop. And on that note, I want to introduce our third pair of panelists who are from the Verdugo Job Center, and they're going to talk about how they've worked with adult education and doing enrollment, co-enrollment under Title I. So please, can I hand it over to Rashida and Ani?
Thank you, Peter. I really appreciate that introduction. That was perfect. Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Rashida Scott, and today I will present myself and my colleague Ani Kachiki, and we'll present a little bit about how we were able to partner with our adult education partner, Glendale Community College. Slide. There is animation in here, so there might be like an additional click you would have to do, just so you know.
Cool.
Okay, so just to go over really high level what WIOA Title I eligibility requirements are. Essentially, it's adults who are 18 or over with barriers to employment, dislocated workers, which is industry speak for individuals who have been laid off or terminated from their employer and they're unlikely to return to their previous occupation. Unlikely to return to their previous occupation is subjective. Well, at least at our center it is. It could be because their industry is obsolete. It could be because they need to upskill. You just have to build that strong case. So, and they have to be collecting unemployment insurance or recently exhausted unemployment insurance. That's dislocated worker in a nutshell. And then WIOA also has a youth component, which is for, youth and young adults between 18 and 24. So essentially that is our basic eligibility requirements for our for WIOA Title I eligibility. Next slide, please. And then one more time. Sorry, there should be a title. If you
There
click
it
it,
is.
there we go. All right, so when it comes to workforce services in practice, here are just a few examples of the types of resources that are available to your students if you decide that you want to work with your local AJCC and refer them to your AJCC partner. Resume writing, where job search, labor market research, and a little bit more about that. With the resume writing, case managers do work closely with the clients to create or edit their resumes. And when it comes to job search, we do assist by referring the clients to different job leads depending on their career goals and class schedule. Our Workforce Center is very, very specific about honoring individuals' actual responsibilities that they have outside of coming to our center. So we take into consideration child care, their educational goals, short-term and long-term, their employment goals, short-term and long-term, and that's how we are able to determine what type of job leads that we're sending to them, so that it makes sense, you know, given their assessment when we meet with them. And we also provide labor market research for our clients, and that means mapping out an employment plan of action for our clients while still honoring their education status and their education goals. And this plan of action is a live document. It's something that continues to change and continues to pivot as we continue to work with the client. So it's not in stone. If there are different developments that come up, we're able to pivot and figure out another way to assist them meet their goals. We assess what types of education and training is necessary for them to meet their goals. So, you know, we look at where they're at and where they want to go, and we create those steps together with that client to ensure that it's a team effort when we work with them. And finally, you know, we provide research on in-demand growing industries and career pathway options. So when they're in school, it's important, as I'm sure everyone knows, that if they're, even if it's, you know, they're going and they're taking their ELL classes, if they have a career goal in mind, it's important that they start learning about that goal, learning about what it is that they're going to have to, what type of education or training they're going to need in order to attain it, what types of ancillary occupations align with this employment goal, and can they get to those jobs, can they get that type of job right now, you know, just sort of building that path for them. So that's another type of resource that we provide. Ani, you want to take it away?
Yes, thank you, Rashida. Another great opportunity that is offered also through WIOA Title I is different grants that we get each year. These grants are specialized and targeted to different populations, and the goal is to assist with various supportive services outside of workforce, but also still in line with their goals, employment goals. So oftentimes these supportive services help the client or the student to look at different career pathways more widely. The other opportunity also we have through Title I is the on-the-job training and work experience. So when we enroll the client, we're able to determine their eligibility for on-the-job training or work experience programs. We had a lot of students who graduated from community colleges, obtained certificate programs. However, it is still difficult for them to find a job in the market that is highly competitive. In this case, they need to upgrade their skills to enter a good employment. Or we have students who completed maybe occupations in their home country, but they need additional certificate to enter employment in the United States to enhance their career chances of employment. So next slide, please. Just to show one more, yes, thank you. Just to show what the process looks like of co-enrolling into adult education students and how to establish a relationship is the three most important components that we highlighted. The first is, of course, we need to establish a partnership. We were able to build with GCC instructors, administrators, and career resource staff. What we did was we facilitated presentations to students and staff about the VJC services. We continually updated school regarding different job fairs, employment opportunities. We always ensure communication between instructors and the case managers remain consistent. The next step is to maintain this partnership. We do this through weekly check-ins with GCC instructors. We coordinate mini job fairs that are connected to career pathway programs, and we recruit students to pay for career pathway programs at GCC. We ensure services are accessible and equitable. We offer workforce services in threshold languages. We offer services virtually and in person, of course, given COVID protocols. We utilize employer partnership to advocate for the adult education job seekers. Next slide, please. In an example, what this looks like is a student with needs for supportive service and assistance in creating a resume or interviewing preparedness. The barrier that we have to encounter is that the student is an English language learner. So we have to always take that into consideration, the student's barriers. Next, please. And this chart just shows the continuum of services that was provided and how in reality it works. Is first, the instructor refers the client to the Verdugo Job Center. Verdugo Job Center assigns a case manager. After the case manager contacts the client, enrolls the client, and conducts assessment to craft an employment plan, then the AJC case manager is able to assist with the interview preparation using the ability to pivot both native and English languages. VJC case manager also identified the grants that the student would qualify in order to assist with supportive services. And we were able to reach our ultimate goal, which is the employment for the student. Next, please. And in order to find the local job center, you can click on the link that's shown on the slide here and type your zip code, and it will bring up different workforce centers that are located close. And if you need to reach out to us for any questions, additional information, our contact information is on the slide as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter, I think you're muted. Peter, you're still muted.
Oh, sorry,
There you
sorry. It would jump back. I'm curious, when you talk about working with Glendale Community College instructors, can you say a little bit about sort of what disciplines that they tend to be? Are they primarily like English language instructors? Are they CTE instructors, or all the whole spectrum at the non-credit realm?
Ani, I think you could take that question.
Yes, thank you. So we work with ESL instructors also, but mostly for career pathway, medical assistants, people who are in medical assistant courses, people who are in CNC, care coordinator, yeah.
Okay.
mostly
Mostly
career
healthcare, because
pathway.
that's a pretty strong industry in the Glendale area. So, you know, for the last, between healthcare and manufacturing, I think Marianne has brought up the CNC manufacturing program that they've had at GCC. So we've primarily focused on those two industries.
Okay, thanks.
And what is the ideal time for those instructors to connect their students with you? Is it right at the beginning of their signing up for a program, or is it as they're nearing completing a program?
What I've seen in practice is throughout, you know, instructors refer, they, you know, the students themselves will come and, you know, speak, and we'll provide our information. They'll reach out to us directly. But if it's a referral from an instructor, it's any time that they, you know, throughout the program. But we do find that there's an increase towards the end of their training program, unless the student comes to the teacher or the instructor and says, hey, you know, I need to get a job. I'm in financial distress. And then that aha moment happens. Well, oh, let me refer you to Ani, because Ani works for the job center and she'll be able to help you with your, you know, find a job now, so you can continue in your coursework.
Mhm. I have one other quick question also, just going back, is can you say a little bit about how you established such a good relationship with your local adult school, which is Glendale Community College, non-credit? Can you say a little bit about just how that relationship evolved?
Ani, I'll take a little and then you take a little. Does that sound good?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So there are two experiences that I've had personally working for the Verdugo Job Center, and that I've noticed. One is we were co-located at the adult school, and that was in the Career Resource Center. So we would go there once a week, you know, and the Career Resource Center reception would set up appointments, and we'd show up and people would come in. We would meet with them. We would, you know, work with the other career resource staff members that actually work for the adult school, and we would, you know, communicate about the student as appropriately, given confidentiality and whatnot. So, and then, you know, we would try to ensure that everyone was in the loop. But the co-location was a really big deal, and it really helped to build that partnership, especially when the GCC staff started they noticed that their students were getting hired, you know, and it's just that once you remove that burden, it allows the student to continue in their educational journey. And then Ani has other experiences, so.
Yes, thank you, Rashida, and definitely co-location helped a lot. We had also classes at our center for ESL students. The students would register for classes for GCC, but the class would take place at our location. They had a separate room. So that kind of helped us a lot in establishing relationship both with the students who were ESL and with the instructor. We do a lot of meetings with the instructors, and we keep that communication going. If the instructors on their end also help us a lot when we need to reach out to a student, or when the student needs to reach out to us as fast as possible. And so that worked really well. And from my experience, the reason why we were also able to connect very well, especially with the students, was because of the ability to provide those services in different threshold languages, such as Spanish and Armenian, which are dominant in our area.
Absolutely.
Good point. Questions? Certainly you folks have some questions too. Where are we in terms of
Well, it's such a great example you share, Rashida and Ani, of really blending your two systems together so that students receive services from both according to their needs, and don't have to think too much about being involved in two completely different major publicly funded systems. It's pretty clear that those students, like the one you gave the example of, feel it somewhat seamlessly. I think we're going to be moving into sort of general questions now as well. I want to really thank the presenters for giving some very different angles on a common challenge right now, which is really connecting our adult ed students to work opportunities, to work experience, to apprenticeship, to jobs, whether that's through deep employer connections, structured apprenticeship pathways, connecting to the WIOA system. We're interested to hear your general questions to the group about these topics. Also really interested to hear, for those of you participating today, just what if this resonates with you? What have you been using? What have you been trying to address some of these needs? Are there other examples that you can bring from your experience? We encourage you to enter some ideas in the chat along with your questions.
Please.
I'm going to be skipping ahead on the slides. While you're thinking of questions, there was one other slide we wanted to share with you. We dreamed of having yet another presenter, and then had to be realistic about this, that we only had a certain amount of time. We really wanted to feature another presenter who could talk about innovations happening right now around short-term career education programs leading to industry recognized credentials, and how valuable those are right now for people who are unemployed and quickly needing to get back to work. Earning income and having skills that are competitive in the job market. So there's some great examples across the state of programs getting very, very creative about this. So perhaps we can have some exchange about that as well. Let's see. I see, Adriana, thank you for your two questions. I know there was an earlier question Adriana had for the first presenters on how they were able to include English learners in those programs. Angela, I know you're still here. Maybe you can also maybe you can speak to that earlier question Adriana had. And now the more recent question, has there been any discussion on giving training benefits to undocumented students who have an ITIN number? Angela, do you want to address the first question?
Sure. Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, this came during your presentation. So Adriana wrote, Angela, you mentioned you had students with limited English. Did they get a chance in the program? If so, how?
So yes, we had several students go through the pre-apprenticeship program who had some language barriers. In order to participate, they had to have a high school diploma. It could be from anywhere. But what we noticed was that those students with more language barriers had a more difficult time with the curriculum because, as I mentioned, it's a Tooling U online curriculum. And many of those individuals weren't able to finish within the 5-week period. So what we ended up doing was bringing them back. After we finished the CARES implementation of the program, it ended in December, we had a break and we brought those students back and gave them some more intensive training to help them with the curriculum so that they could complete the program. And we also had, through our CBOs, we had Greater Sacramento Urban League, La Familia Counseling Center, and Asian Resources, Inc. were 3 of the CBOs participating through the CMC. I know lots of partners. And we got a lot of referrals of students who had very limited language acquisition that was not at the level they needed to enter the program. They had to have a CASAS level at a certain level to enter. So that's what got us started, got us thinking that we really need to look at tailoring our program to students who may have a high school diploma, but their language barriers are quite much bigger than what we can achieve in 5 weeks. So we're planning to do the IET program and extend our pre-apprenticeship program to about 10 weeks so that we can provide some more language assistance to those students as they're going through.
Great, amazing. That's such a great example. You don't see that kind of creativity that often to really make sure that a strong program like an apprenticeship is absolutely accessible. Might take a little more time, but it can be done. So that's great. The other question here was about, has there been discussion of giving training benefits to undocumented students? And Nancy, I see you had a response to
Right.
that. Do you want to elaborate?
For us in the non-credit side of the community college, we accept everybody. Certainly students who have a Social Security are able to receive more benefits, particularly through our Job Link or AJCC program. But we include everybody. So boot vouchers, tool vouchers, it doesn't matter whether you have a Social Security number, OSHA 10, forklift operations certification. Students are able to get their non-credit short-term career education training certificates through the college, regardless of right to work status. And we actually ran clinics for our students in conjunction with the Great Day Labor Center on workers' rights, employers' rights, how to check to make sure that you were getting paid what you were supposed to be getting paid. There's an app that students can use or workers can use to check their paychecks. So taught them how to read a paycheck, how to get help if they needed to get help, who they could advocate through in the community. So while we do specific on the job skilled training, we also do general community-based training to make them to give our students tools that aren't specific to a skill for an industry, but it makes them better employees once they are employed and have right to work. And we also help them connect to community-based organizations for food, transportation, childcare, healthcare, and other support services that help them to remain in their education and training programs. We happen to have a very supportive community. When the fires happened, several nonprofit organizations and private foundations stepped up to set up I think it was about $5 million went into an undocumented community member fund so that they could have financial resources during the recovery period.
It's impressive.
Great.
Are there other examples from the presenters of how you've creatively served folks without the right to work documentation? Because that's a large number of adult ed students coming under that category. Any other examples? I know, I'll just say that I know that across the state, some consortia are developing entrepreneurship training so that people who get a number of skills but do not have a Social Security number, they can start their own business, particularly in some of what you guys are talking about in landscaping and fire abatement and stuff like that, construction, that a number of undocumented folks have indeed taken advantage of that and started their own companies. I don't know if anyone has any experience with that. I'm curious.
Santa Rosa Junior College does run a non-credit small business development program. We do that in conjunction with our economic development board. They have programs both in English and Spanish, and they offer microloans. They start in the non-credit program, and then we also have a small business management program. So if you already have a business going, but you need to have more training on the human resources side or on the accounting side, or how do I market my business to a larger audience, then they can go into the small business management. And that is one of the more successful programs in addition to digital literacy.
Great, thank you.
And that program grew enough that we can offer a Spanish-only section and an English-only section. We run about 60 students through the program every semester, and you can get your certificate in one semester.
That's great. Other questions or
Well,
comments?
I see several comments here really reinforcing the value of these partnerships with the public workforce system and accessing WIOA Title I funding, whether it's through co-locating, having an AJCC on site, or moving classes to different locations. That I think now, perhaps now more than ever, with people with the large numbers who are really needing to make sure their training connects to work, it's really worth learning from those who have tried different things that work to make those systems connect. I see that we are just about at time. So we're going to need to wrap it up. I wanna thank the panelists so much. I believe we have, we don't have an extra slide for you, Mandalee, but I'm gonna leave you just a few minutes at the end here to do the kind of wrap up that you'd like to do on behalf of the Cape TAP. But I think on behalf of High Road Alliance, definitely I want to extend huge thanks to the presenters. Your work is incredible and so important right now. And your willingness to share your time, take your time out of your extremely busy days to share your experiences with others is really helpful. And thank you for all who participated. We're all in this as a community here, and any opportunity we can get to share with each other and learn from each other is especially valuable.
Yep.
With that, I'd like to turn it over to, yeah, Peter, I know I didn't mean to cut you off. I want to make sure that Mandalee also has a chance to chime in at the end.
I will accede. Let's let Mandalee speak. This has been great. You know, there's so much, this was so rich to hear from all of you. Thank you. I just want to thank the presenters as well. So thank you very much. Mandalee.
Well, thank you. And thank you, everybody. And I'll just echo those same sentiments for participating in today's webinar. California's Post-Pandemic Recovery Deeper Dive with High Road Alliance, Jeannie Malika and Peter Simon and their guest panelists. I also want to bring your attention to the chat box, and please take a moment to give them feedback in the evaluation link just posted by my colleague, Holly Clark. Thank you for that. And also bear in mind that we do have other webinars coming up. We have one next week with CASAS, the Data Dive, final part of a 3-part series, as well as Beyond Emerging Remote Teaching Strategies and Resources to Promote Collaboration and Equity for Effective, Sustainable, Technology-Driven Instruction. And that'll be on June 4th. We also have a link where you can view all upcoming webinars, so please explore those, and we hope that we will see you there, so register there. And at the very, very end, I guess, we will send you a copy of the recording once it's been processed. So look for that next week. Share with other colleagues that you think can benefit from this, along with the link to the presentation that was also shared in the chat box. And with that, I will say thank you again. I hope you all have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.